here's Brody Brazil.
You know, I saw this article the other day on NBC News, and something about it just struck me. I realized that I feel like it might be accurate, but I'm also realizing that I am witnessing some of this happen in real time in real life. And what it discusses here is that psychologists are saying the pandemic has caused so much stress that it's turned to a chronic form of it, and now it's kind of being released as the pandemic in certain ways subsides. Doesn't go away, or it's not over, it's not eliminated, but as life opens back up a little bit, we're seeing signs of how stressed people were, are, and continue to be. I'll kind of breeze through this article here. I don't want to touch on everything. You can read it for yourself. It says, Marie-Christine Nizzi, a postdoctoral researcher at Dartmouth College and the Brain Institute at Chapman University, studies trauma and resilience, which includes how the brain handles stress and sometimes doesn't handle it. And it's the latter that's particularly timely, with many Americans inching towards normalcy. Psychologists like her are keeping a close eye on how the mental weight of the pandemic is showing up in society, even if the worst is months behind most people. And I think that's the great point to make here. Hopefully, you know, we've seen the very deepest parts of the pool that we were all swimming in together. But even as we kind of get to the shallow end now, there's still a lot of reactions of people and how they're treating others. And sometimes it's in public places like a restaurant, or we've seen it on airplanes or the grocery store. I mean, places where others are working to help the public, and the public treats them so terribly. And sometimes that's always happened, but I feel like especially so right now, you're seeing a stress that's been so built up and resides so deep in people from what they've lived through from basically March of 2020 till now, that it's just finally releasing. And for some people, this may continue for a long time to come. And another place, I forgot to mention this, I feel like I notice it the most, is driving. There's people stressed out because the commutes are coming back. They're having to go into work. They're uncomfortable about that. Now they're cutting people off. They're speeding. They're racing. It's just, there's always been a certain extent of that. But right now, it does feel like we're seeing more of it. Here's a quote from Nizzi, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right here. Quote, people can't have an emergency stress response that stays the same forever. So they convert from an acute stress response to a chronic stress response, she said. As the stress becomes chronic, their ability to cope with all of the changes is starting to be overwhelmed. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on Americans' mental health since the first cases were recorded at the beginning of last year, 2020. A CDC and prevention survey from December found that 42% of Americans reported experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression, a major increase from the 11% who reported experiencing those same symptoms prior to the pandemic. Are you reading that? Are you seeing that? 42% of Americans reporting experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression, as opposed to 11% the year before. Psychologists are worried about the ramifications, and some say that there could be a connection between these mental health issues and behavioral changes that are starting to manifest across the country. There's been many reports of people behaving aggressively. So I was talking about before with the driving stuff. On airplanes over the past several months, for example, and Nizzi said that this could be a result of people struggling with chronic stress and anxiety. There's also been a rise in anti-Asian hate crimes, domestic violence, and more that could be partially but not entirely tied to poor mental health conditions in the U.S. And so again, I'm wondering that the crazy stuff, some of the crazy stuff we've started to see again, is that a result of us being so isolated from each other for a while? We're not used to this, or is it the pent-up mental effects of people surviving, fortunately surviving the pandemic, but realizing that it took a mental toll on them elsewhere. Going back to another quote from, I believe her name was, excuse me as I go to the top here, Marie Christine Nizzi. Nizzi said, things won't just go back to normal once the pandemic is under control in the U.S. and everything's open again. People who are currently dealing with chronic stress, anxiety, or PTSD could very well be dealing with it for quite some time. Quote, what we're likely to see as people return back to normal is that it's not going to feel normal. They're not going to feel normal, she said. We're setting people up for failure by saying we're back to normal. Are we? What exactly is back to normal? The beach is open. Okay, how does that impact the fact that I'm processing an entire year of a lot of things going wrong? Nizzi and others say it's important that the U.S. increase its investments in mental health services so that many people who are struggling with mental health issues right now can hopefully get the help that they need. She said they shouldn't just be swept under the rug once the country has reopened and things look like they're going back to the way they were, because many will still be facing a difficult situation. And I agree. There's another quote here saying that these long-term effects are not going away. So, hey, you tell me. Are you dealing with something that continues to be a mental strain, a stress point? Have you noticed that other people are kind of acting, I mean, we say normal, they're acting abnormally stressed about the last year? I mean, it makes sense. All of this makes perfect sense. I'm not trying to paint a picture of something I think that doesn't exist. I'm trying to help bring light to a situation that's, kind of scary, to be honest. And mental health is viewed so much differently than physical health. I mean, we have been literally as a country, as a world, so focused on physical health, surviving a pandemic physically. How much has been talked about surviving the pandemic mentally?